On the 15th of October 1917, one of the most infamous female spies in history was taken out to her execution. It was said that she wore a near-tailored suit which was specifically made for the occasion of her death, and she was glamorous as she faced the 12 French soldiers who had been appointed to carry out her death sentence. She allegedly even blew a kiss to the firing squad who was stood there with their weapons primed at her. Mata Hari, as she was best known, was a Dutch exotic dancer who was convicted for spying for the Germans during the First World War. She used the beauty of her career and the powers of seduction to spy for the Germans, and some today believe there was no way that she could have been a spy, and some state that she was innocent. But what is the story of her life and her execution? Mata Hari was born as Margaretha Zell in 1876 inside the Netherlands, and she grew up in a very privileged family. Her father owned his own business and operated a hat shop, and he also would invest in oil and other ventures. And he became rather rich and even sent his daughter to the best school, but he was declared bankrupt in 1899 after a number of his risks failed, and Mata's parents then divorced, and her mother also died a short while after. When she was 18, she came across an advert in a newspaper that claimed that Dutch Army Captain Rudolf MacLeod was living in Indonesia and he was looking for a wife. She then pursued this, and with this she managed to marry MacLeod in Amsterdam, and there was a large age gap, but despite this, Mata gave birth to 2 children, but the married life wasn't great for her. Her husband was very abusive, and he was also an alcoholic, and Mata Hari took the brunt of this. He would not change, and there were further heartbreaks as one of her children died, and in 1902 the pair divorced and went their own ways. Mata became lost, and she did not know where to turn, and she had hardly any finances or prospects despite her schooling. So she then moved to Paris and took up a job performing inside of a circus as a horse rider. However, she also then began to pose for artists who would paint her. But she then fell into a career as an exotic dancer, and she became very famous in the local Paris area. During her shows, she was flirtatious, and she captivated the audiences with her poses and enticing behaviour. And she then began to attract wealthy fans and became a mistress to a man who was a millionaire. She began to become world famous, and newspapers told of this exotic Paris dancer, and then she adopted the stage name of Mata Hari, and she was seen as an enigma. Her career continued to go well, but as tastes changed, some in Paris changed their opinion of her, and they thought her exotic dancing was just cheap and a way for strange men to catch a glimpse of a semi-naked lady. She performed her final show in the March of 1915, and she had also become a courtesan, and she had a number of affairs and relationships with prominent politicians, army officers and other foreign celebrities, and she was seen by many as a free spirit. But others thought there was a darker side to her work. In the years before her final show, World War I had broken out across Europe, and as she was Dutch, she could travel anywhere as the nation was neutral. There was no restrictions for her, and she did stay away from the front lines, but during this time she met a Russian pilot named Vadim Maslov, and after a battle he was injured and he lost the vision in one of his eyes. Mata Hari visited him as he was recovering, and she was then accosted by French officers who said she could only see Maslov if she agreed to spy for the French. Mata Hari had many high-profile admirers, and she had even performed for the German Kaiser, and the French wanted information about him and the war plans, and they thought that the former exotic dancer would be a good person to extract this. She was offered a huge sum of money to do this and to seduce the Prince of the Kaiser and to extract information about the plans for the German war effort, but the Prince never had any knowledge about military affairs, despite the fact he was Kaiser Wilhelm's heir, and he was kept away from matters of military importance. He preferred to party than get involved in politics and the war. But regardless of this, Mata Hari tried to force a meeting with the prince, and she met a number of German military leaders and commanders in 1916 to see if she could meet with the prince. She claimed that in this she would be willing to share the French war secrets with the Germans if they paid her, and some historians believe that she became a double agent, willing to play off both the French and the Germans. In 1917, one German officer sent messages to Berlin about a German spy who was codenamed H21. The information which surrounded the description of this spy was closely linked to Mata Hari. And the French learned about this, and they decoded the message and then believed that she had been turned by the Germans. She did not really collect much information, and she only really managed to find out gossip and rumours, and she did not handle many military secrets. But the French then took action against the former exotic dancer, and on the 13th of February 1917, she was arrested in Paris on the Champs-Élysées inside of her lavish hotel, and for 11 days she was locked up in prison before she was brought to trial and accused of spying for the German enemy. The prosecution stated that she had given over information that led to the deaths of 50,000 soldiers, but this claim was not able to be backed up with evidence. She was interrogated at great lengths, and many thought she was someone who had to fabricate stories, and she stated that she took 20,000 francs from a German officer in payment for belongings which had been confiscated. There were Dutch people who attended the trial, and she tried to appeal them. However, she was not allowed to bring witnesses to court, and her defence could not cross-examine the witnesses either. But at the end of the case, she was sentenced to death for spying. It was later claimed that she admitted spying after being condemned, but this is debated, and she stated that her heart lied with France and the Allies during World War I, and she stated that she never wanted to offend the nation that had given her so much fame, wealth or celebrity. But it was on the 15th of October 1917 that Mata Hari was awoken from her prison cell before dawn, as she was taken to the Caserne de Neversys, which was inside of an old fort, the military barracks where soldiers had been based. But today the soldiers gathered there were to take the life of one of the most famous female celebrities in Paris. There were 12 men who had been gathered, and Mata Hari was brought out in front of them as they stood with their rifles by their sides, and she was led up to a post. She was not tied to it, and she was offered a blindfold, but she turned this down. She was stood facing her firing squad, and they were then told to ready as the commander raised his sword in the air. She blew a kiss to the executioners, and when the sword was brought to the ground, the firing squad opened up their weapons and fired their bullets into Mata Hari. She was killed immediately, and she hit the floor and lay flat on her back, with her face looking at the sky. To finish her off, the officers in charge approached her body, pulled out a revolver and fired a single shot into her head, giving her a coup de grace gunshot to make sure she was dead. Today, the story of Mata Hari, the temptress and exotic dancer of Paris, who became one of the most notorious spies of the First World War, is highly debated. Some believe that she wasn't a spy at all, and that she was so well known that there was no way she would have been able to have spied effectively. It was stated that she never passed anything important on, only gossip, but today she's remembered as a woman who was executed during the First World War, and I would love to know in the comments below if you believe she was a spy or not. Thank you for watching, and to support, please remember to subscribe, and again, thank you so much for watching.